During the Democratic debate, each candidate was asked about their position on the Trump impeachment investigation. A lot of the answers were similar, but there were some differences among the candidates. So let's go ahead and start with the first answer, and it is Bernie Sanders on Donald Trump's corruption. Take a look.
In my judgment, Trump is the most corrupt president in the history of this country. It's not just that he obstructed justice with the Mueller report. I think that the House will find him worthy of impeachment because of the emoluments clause. This is a president who is enriching himself while using the Oval Office to do that, and that is outrageous. And I think in terms of the recent Ukrainian incident, the idea that we have a president of the United States who is prepared to hold back national security money to one of our allies in order to get dirt on a presidential candidate is beyond comprehension. So I look forward, by the way, not only to a speedy and expeditious impeachment process, but Mitch McConnell has got to do the right thing and allow a free and fair trial in the Senate.
So I want to note that Mitch McConnell did say that he would allow for the Senate to vote on whether or not to find Donald Trump, guilty of what the House has decided to impeach him on, right? So that's good, and I think McConnell might actually do the right thing in that regard. He's already prefaced it, but go ahead.
He asked for a free and fair trial.
That's true, yeah.
That's a little different.
We'll see how it plays out. My suspicion is that there's a growing number of Republicans who despise Donald Trump or have despised Donald Trump, but didn't feel emboldened enough to say anything about it. There is now polling indicating that a slim majority of Americans, this includes Republicans, not only support the impeachment investigation, but they support taking Trump out of office.
Yeah.
So this is a Fox News poll, 51%. That's saying something. So if that number grows, I think more Republicans, and it's sad that they act based on their own personal interests and political careers. But I think that what they're paying attention to is the polling. And if the polling says the majority of Americans want him out, I think that they will vote to, they'll find him guilty.
Pretty early on, there was some reporter who said he's talked to a bunch of Republican senators, and off the record, like 30 said they'd support it, which made me think, man, we've elected a bunch of weenies.
Definitely.
I understand that there's multiple things that you vote based on, but some concept of leadership is sort of supposed to be baked into how we choose politicians, especially for federal government. And they're the only group of people more uniformly afraid of their own shadow are generally police officers who are given guns and put in areas with a lot of minorities living in them. That's like the only people who walk around with more fear on a day-to-day basis, unfortunately. These are our leaders, and they're terrified to just come out and say, yeah, it's obvious he broke the law. He's done it over and over again. He's happy he did it. His followers don't care that he did it, but I didn't get into government so that decades later I could protect a reality TV star. I did it because I care about this country. It's not true for most of them, but it would be nice if it was.
What I like about his answer is it was concise, it was to the point, and it revealed how you can chew gum and walk at the same time, right? So I can't stand people who are like, no, we can't focus on impeachment. We can't hold the president accountable for his unlawful behavior because then we're gonna lose sight of all the progressive. No, you don't have to lose sight of anything, right? These are supposed to be people who are serving us. These are public servants, and they are supposed to also value our system of checks and balances and hold the executive branch accountable. I love the fact that Bernie Sanders shows you that he can do it all. You can hold Trump accountable while also proposing very detailed policies that Americans have been waiting for.
I think that the very reason those of us who love Bernie, that's why the people who hate him, because there is no, it's straight with no chaser, and I think that that's right when you said we have to be direct and intentional with our words, specifically when we're talking about this administration that has been so toxic and so destructive to our progress as a country. And I'm glad that Bernie is able to say, yes, I think he should be impeached, or he's impeachable, and these are the reasons why. And I think that the American people should gravitate towards people who are direct with them.
Yes.
Like that,
The other thought I had about this was that this was thankfully the only area where they asked every single candidate a different question about impeachment,
right?
Which went on way too long. Yeah. And that's where so you had earlier said that you thought that they focused too much on Trump. I feel like the candidates, like Cory Booker would bring up Trump or whoever, Pete Buttigieg would bring up Trump. The moderators, I think, didn't actually ask too many questions aside from the first 25 minutes, which was 12 different questions about impeachment. So that was frustrating, since they all largely seem to agree.
Exactly.
For the most part.
So I do want to note that most of them did agree with what Bernie Sanders said. I just liked the way that he worded it in such a strong and concise way. And it also showed you, he mentioned corruption, which is important. And then he mentioned the crimes that he's been accused of in working with foreign governments to dig up dirt on his political rivals. I think it's important to mention those things. And most other candidates agreed with him, except for one somewhat of an exception, which we'll get to in just a second. But first, Bernie's answer was so strong that even Biden agreed with him. So let's take a look at that.
Yes, they have. I said from the beginning that if in fact Trump continued to stonewall what the Congress is entitled to know about his background, what he did, all the accusations in the Mueller report, if they did that, they would have no choice but to begin an impeachment proceeding, which gives them more power to seek more information. This president, and I agree with Bernie, Senator Sanders, is the most corrupt president in modern history, and I think all of our history. And the fact is that this president of the United States has gone so far as to say, since this latest event, that in fact he will not cooperate in any way at all, will not list any witnesses, will not provide any information, will not do anything to cooperate with the impeachment. They have no choice but to move.
So I'm gonna be honest, I liked his answer because he started it with, I agree with Bernie.
It happened a couple times, actually.
It did happen a couple times. Anytime you have a candidate agreeing with another candidate in their answer, that's a good sign for the initial candidate who answered. And so Bernie Sanders' answer was strong, which is why out of all of the candidates, that was the one that I wanted to show you. And the only person who really differed in regard to responding on this question or to this question was Tulsi Gabbard. I want to watch this again for the second time. I'm going to be watching it with you because I wasn't entirely sure where she was going with it. So let's pay close attention to her wording here.
If impeachment is driven by these hyper-partisan interests, it will only further divide an already terribly divided country. Unfortunately, this is what we've already seen play out as calls for impeachment really began shortly after Trump won his election. And as unhappy as that may make us as Democrats, he won that election in 2016. The serious issues that have been raised around this phone call that he had with the president of Ukraine and many other things that transpired around that are what caused me to support the inquiry in the House. And I think that it should continue to play its course out, to gather all the information, provide that to the American people, recognizing that that is the only way forward. If the House votes to impeach, the Senate does not vote to remove Donald Trump, he walks out and he feels exonerated, further deepening the divides in this country that we cannot afford.
Okay, so all right, so she mentions impeachment's gonna further divide us. We're as divided as can be. So if you look at polling, it is kind of incredible because a growing number of Americans, Republicans included, are supportive of the impeachment inquiry, but more importantly, are supportive of removing him. So while I understand the concerns about Trump possibly being acquitted by Senate Republicans, I'm actually okay with taking that risk because I think it's Senate Republicans don't want to be on the record acquitting Donald Trump. They hate it. They hate the fact that they're possibly gonna have to deal with that. But I think even if they do end up acquitting him, it's important to have them on the record emboldening a criminal in office.
The AOC made that point very well. This fear about how it could end up helping him, like that's what made Nancy Pelosi take month after month after month after month to back this. I understand a lot of people are afraid of it, but that's a very sort of like weirdly centrist fear that also completely dodges the fact that this is not about, we don't choose to impeach based on, is it gonna help, is it gonna hurt? It's constitutional responsibility. Stop looking at politics purely through an electoral sort of calculus. And also, yes, right after he was elected, there were probably some resistance folk who were like, let's impeach him immediately. But that's not how it went in with actual elected officials.
Yes.
And the people who were out in front were some of the strongest progressives, like AOC and Rashida Tlaib and all of them. They were out there being attacked week after week after week for being bold on this issue because they acknowledged what he was doing. They were being attacked by people like Nancy Pelosi as not getting how this thing works.
That's exactly
and so
right.
I think the idea that this was just a partisan thing, no, these were very serious progressives who were coming out in support of impeachment.
And it was, again, after the midterm. So her statement about how there were calls for impeachment immediately after he was elected, first of all, that's a right-wing talking point. It's a talking point that I heard the editor of Breitbart make on a panel that, I wasn't part of that panel, but I was there watching that panel before my panel started. And it's this notion that, the only reason why people are going after Trump is because they can't accept the fact that he was elected president. No, but that is not what's going on with this impeachment inquiry. And that is not what happened immediately after he was elected. No one in elected office was calling for his impeachment immediately after he was elected. It's just not true. It happened after the midterms when actual bold progressives were elected and there was evidence that they can lean on to explain why they were in favor of an impeachment inquiry.
Yeah, nobody was calling for impeachment. We were calling for a time machine so we can go back in time and do this all over again.
I was calling for another round.
Another round. What I think, I agree. I think that she hits us with a lot of those Republican talking points. Like when she says, he, like it or not, he won that election in 2016. A lot of people would beg to differ with that, but that's one of those right-wing talking points. The other thing is that we have to stop as the Democrats, the left, whatever you want to call this group now, because we got so many names within this group, getting bullied by that supports Donald Trump's belief and the things that he continues to put out into the world, that if he gets impeached, that if they get him out, that there's going to be a civil war, that there's going to be civil unrest. You know what? So what? So be it. Because there's civil unrest now. And that whole idea that we have to walk around
on eggshells.
Yeah, and
because if we don't walk on eggshells, Donald Trump, the problem is, the criticism is never directed toward Donald Trump encouraging the violent behavior by his supporters, because that's what he's done over and over again. Yes. He's done it when he thought he was going to lose the presidential election and he was putting out messaging that it's rigged, the system's rigged against you. Why do you think he was doing that? He was planting seeds specifically so they can go out there and protest violently because they didn't get what they want. Yep. And that's exactly what he's doing now when it comes to this impeachment investigation.
So then she goes here and she says this, and that supports that, right? Mm-hmm. It's supporting the bullies, supporting the ideology that if we don't hold someone accountable for their wrongdoing, that there are going to be issues. And that is what terrorism is. Like, that's terroristic in some ways. The fact that we have to walk on eggshells and be nervous, that some people are going to be upset because we're going to remove their president for breaking the law and for betraying and forsaking the American people is crazy unto itself. And that, my friends, is why I don't trust it when it comes to her, because the talking points are not progressive. They're not even liberal. They're very, very much rooted in that Republican and right-wing thinking.
Yeah, I mean, she used a phrase that's super old school about abortions and how they need to be
the Hillary Clinton thing.
Yeah, do you remember the exact wording?
Yeah, they're supposed to be safe, legal, and rare.
And rare.
The idea being that, I suppose, and this was a lot of Democrats at that time, back in the 90s, they wanted to be supportive technically of women's reproductive rights, but they either personally had an issue with it or they were terrified that the right wing would run elections against them based on it. So some people, their religious values or whatever, they didn't want it to happen, but they knew that we have a secular government. Others just terrified of the right wing. Yeah,
and that leading from fear thing, it just doesn't resonate with people like me. And I don't know how representative my ideology is of the general Democratic base, but I'm tired of people kowtowing to right-wingers because they're either scared or because they've bought into this notion that they need to negotiate or concede and work with them. This is not the 1990s. there is no negotiating and working with Republicans. They have no interest in negotiating and working with us. And so if you're starting this entire process with, oh, we're too divided and we really need to do what Republicans want so we're not further divided, no, it's just not a good strategy.
Well, and we're being consistent because we criticized Nancy Pelosi for that month after month after month, and Joe Biden talking about how we just get rid of Trump and then everything will go back to we can work together and everything. Like, no, we don't believe that that's true. We don't trust. People are worried about having another Obama, partially because Obama was he spent too much time trying to work with the other side and squandered a lot of the time that he had in office. And so we need to push back against this idea that there's some hypothetical golden age that we can go back to where bipartisanship reigned and everything. That's just not the case.
And Obama made that decision with a group of people who openly stated, we're never gonna work with you. We're never gonna let what you want to happen.
And Mitch McConnell's already said that about the next president.
So what are we doing here? And so that's why these people need to be eliminated. The ones that are not contributing, the ones that they're wasting our time. And as Americans, we had to hear so many people talking that it was taking away from the people who really are on the ground trying to make things happen.
I totally agree with that.
I think you could have two debate nights.
No, I don't think you can have 2 debate nights. I think we need to stop playing this ridiculous game because there are people on that stage who aren't serious. Let's just call it what it is. I want to hear from candidates who have an actual chance, and I want to hear them give lengthy, substantive answers without Aaron Burnett interrupting after 30 seconds. I'm frustrated with how this whole process is playing out. And then as soon as someone doesn't qualify, I'm tired of the crying and the whining on social media. You didn't qualify. You're polling at 0.8%. What do you want to do?
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.